I should have remembered the way her perfume made my throat tighten, a heady, synthetic rose that lingered too long. It filled the air just as I took my first step down the aisle. Aunt Cecilia, my mother's older sister, a woman with a smile like a blade and a heart you only ever saw when it was locked behind thick glass. She stood there beside my mother, her gloved hand clutched delicately around a small silver clutch, her eyes trailing me like I was already walking into a grave instead of a marriage. I should have known she wouldn't be able to help herself. The ceremony was flawless, like something out of a film. The kind with golden lights, soft music, and people holding back tears for all the right reasons. My fiancé, Ethan, looked at me as though I were made of something rare. We'd made it through so much: late nights, long distances, the silent war of family disapproval, but nothing prepared me for what would be said just moments before the reception began, when Cecilia, still cloaked in the elegance she wore like armor, pulled me aside. It happened near the archway that led into the garden. I was headed back to the hall to rejoin the guests, flushed with joy and nerves. That's when I felt her hand. Cool, bony fingers curling just slightly around my wrist. Her smile was polite for the others watching, but her eyes didn't match. They were sharp, dry, filled with something more sour than skepticism. "You'll never be happy," she whispered, voice low enough for only me to hear. "Not really. Girls like you pretend, but it always crumbles." I froze. For a moment, I didn't understand the words. Not because they were unclear, but because they were so violently out of place. There I was, dressed in ivory lace and shimmering pearls, held together by hope and mascara. She didn't say congratulations. She didn't say I looked beautiful. She said I'd never be happy. And what stunned me wasn't that she said it. It was that I wasn't surprised. Aunt Cecilia had always found a way to make things about her. Family dinners, holidays, even funerals. She managed to place herself at the emotional center of it all. But that whisper wasn't just bitter. It was personal and cruel and calculated. And suddenly the mask I'd worn for years, the one I'd kept intact for my mother's sake, cracked. Because Cecilia had no idea what I knew about her. I looked her straight in the eye, no longer the nervous bride, no longer the good niece trained to nod and smile and endure. I leaned in, just enough so no one else could hear, and I whispered back, "Funny. That's what Paul said to you the night he left the hotel room." Her expression didn't change right away. It was like watching a porcelain doll shatter in slow motion. The corners of her lips held their pose, but her eyes widened, just slightly. Just enough, and I knew. I'd hit the vein. She stumbled back with a soft, fake laugh, brushing non-existent dust from her clutch. She muttered, "You don't know what you're talking about." But I did. I knew exactly what I was talking about because I had been there. Not in the hotel room, no, but close enough to know what happened. Close enough to have seen Paul, her husband, stagger out of the room 3 doors down from mine with lipstick on his collar and shame flooding his face. He didn't see me. I had come back to the hotel early from a business trip my senior year in college. I'd been on the scholarship Cecilia had pulled strings to get me, something she never let me forget. She had taken credit for every achievement I'd earned since then. She called it helping. I called it ownership. And that night, I learned how much she'd lost control of the one thing she thought she held, her marriage. Paul had knocked on my door the next morning, holding a cup of hotel coffee like it could wash away the night before. He asked me not to say anything, said it was a mistake, one time. He looked tired, broken even, and not the suave man I'd known growing up. He said it was a moment of weakness, a moment that had turned into a series of affairs over the years. That night wasn't the first. It wasn't even the worst. He begged me to keep it between us, for Cecilia's sake. And like a fool, I did. For 10 years, I never told a soul, not even my mother, not even Ethan, because I thought silence was the same as peace. I thought protecting her from the truth meant I was doing something noble. But now, standing there in my wedding gown with her poison-laced whisper still stinging my ears, I realized something else. Silence is what lets women like her thrive. She didn't thank me for protecting her. She tried to curse me in the one moment that should have been sacred. And that's when the rage settled into something more powerful. Resolve. I didn't say more that night. I didn't have to, but the seed was planted. She knew I could ruin her, and for the first time in our lives, the power shifted. I walked away, leaving her frozen near the hedges, eyes darting as though someone else might have overheard. Ethan noticed something was off when I returned to the head table. He whispered, "Everything okay?" reaching for my hand. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I realized how lucky I was. Not because he was perfect, he wasn't, but because he was kind, because he never once tried to control me, diminish me, or make me feel like I was less than. And I had almost let someone like Cecilia stain this day with her bitterness. I said, "She just wanted to wish us well." And it was true. In her own twisted way, that was her version of a blessing. Because in her mind, happiness isn't real. It's borrowed. And she was always afraid someone else might hold on to it longer than she did. But she was wrong. Because I wasn't pretending. I was fighting. Every day. And I'd finally won. The first dance began, and I let Ethan pull me into the light. The music swelled, the guests cheered, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't care who was watching. Not Cecilia, not anyone. Because something inside me had shifted, and the story wasn't over. It was only beginning. I would let her enjoy the evening. I would let her drink her wine and fix her makeup and smile for the photos. But deep down, she would know. I carried the match. And if she ever dared strike again, I wouldn't whisper next time. I'd burn the whole illusion down. Most people think secrets are like seeds. You bury them deep, hoping they'll die in the dark. But secrets don't rot. They root. They grow. And over time, they twist themselves into everything you build. I learned that the hard way when I became the reluctant keeper of Cecilia's secret, a secret that started as a burden and became on the day of my wedding, a weapon. What she didn't know was that I hadn't just seen Paul leaving that hotel room years ago. I had heard everything. It was summer, my final year in college. I was in New York for a tech internship I'd clawed my way into. No connections, just pure hustle. Cecilia had arranged for me to stay in a boutique hotel on her dime, something she liked to remind me of every time we spoke. "You're welcome," she would coo into the phone after every conversation, like her charity was the golden thread stitching my life together. She had joined me for a weekend in the city, supposedly to check on how I was doing, but it was always about the performance. Dinner at rooftop restaurants, photos in designer boutiques. Cecilia curated her life like an art gallery. Her husband, Paul, tagged along for the visit, looking detached and weary, like a man halfway through a sentence he didn't remember agreeing to. That night, I returned to the hotel early after a canceled dinner with friends. I was exhausted and just wanted a shower and silence. My room was 3 doors down from Paul and Cecilia's. I remember fumbling with my key card and hearing voices, low, heated, intimate, in the hallway. I paused, barely breathing. Paul was outside room 702, whispering sharply to a woman in a red dress I didn't recognize. She was older, elegant in a way that said expensive rather than beautiful. Her lipstick was smudged and her heels were in her hand. She kissed him like she'd done it before. He didn't stop her. He didn't even look around. They slipped inside, and the door didn't close all the way. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe curiosity, maybe a sixth sense, maybe something darker. But I crept closer. I stood just near the edge where the carpet turned to tile, and I listened. I didn't mean to, but I did. They spoke in whispers, angry, guilty, desperate. She was married, too. Her name was Diane. She said she couldn't keep doing this, sneaking around like teenagers. Paul promised her it was almost over. Just a few more months, he said. I'll tell her